Welcome to Read Your Comics. Today I'm looking at Death, the High Cost of Living, #1. Today's video, I'm continuing to explore the comics of 1993. That was a pivotal year for the comic book industry. Things were selling at record highs across the board, and this book was the number 251st top seller of the year. Not only that, but it was also the first book to have the Vertigo imprint atop. Other books like, of course, Sandman that this spins out of, Swamp Thing, Doom Patrol, those were all books that predated this, but did not have the Vertigo logo until 1993. So let's take a look at it. Neil Gaiman, of course, is going to be the author, and Chris Bachalo and Mark Buckingham provide the art. I wouldn't say this goes full gimmick cover. It does have a little, silver across the top, but, there's no like foil or die cut or anything of that nature on here to really give it, the moniker of a gimmick cover. I would say the paper is a little more high end for the time. It's still a matte paper, but it's not super thin like a true newsprint, but it's not glossy either. So as I was saying, this is the first book to have the Vertigo imprint. So here you've got kind of a house ad, the shock of the new, step over the edge, Vertigo. Comics have gotten smarter and better looking. So we have a big push now that, comics have kind of hit mainstream at this point. We're past the era of like X-Men and Spider-Man having to be the big sellers. And now some more grown-up people are realizing like, hey, this medium does have a lot to offer. And books like Sandman, Swamp Thing before that had obviously been doing that and building up that kind of a coalition of a fan base. So at this point, Karen Barger of DC had decided it's time to make this its own imprint. Remove it from the DC universe. Let it have its own corner of comics. The funny thing about this series to me is I have read Sandman all the way through at least 3 times. But until I decided to make this little series, I had put off reading this for some reason. I have no real excuse as to why. It was just something that kept, getting pushed off of my reading agenda. So this is a good excuse for me to go ahead and dive into this series. We're going to start out where it looks like we're in London. We give credit to Neil Gaiman and Mike Dingenberg for their work on Sandman when they introduced Death. We're starting out with Mad Hetty. She's under the bridge, and some kind of punk goth kids come, and they have something for her that she asked them to get. Some type of bird, and then she offers them like a small amount of money, and they assume that she has more. Pretty interesting exchange here. These kids seem kind of down on their luck, and they're like, oh, you've got that amount of money, I bet you have more. There's 3 of us and 1 of you. Deep shadows in this. I will say I love Chris Bachalo. I see it in this work, but I think Mark Buckingham cleans it up a little bit more than things you would see later on like Generation X, or even his X-Men run, or even his Spider-Man run, and stuff he does to this day. Mad Hetty's a character that appeared in Sandman sporadically. She appeared to be like a homeless lady. She obviously had been living for a long time. That was hinted at several times, and here we're getting it again. So these girls say they're going to attack her, and they're like, what are you going to do about it? And she picks up the stick, and I'm like, well, I break your leg like this. And she snaps the stick, and it makes her leg break, and she falls down. Of course, that scares the other girls, and they don't mess with her, so she's able to pretty much leave. The girl with the broken leg tries one more time, though. It just falls down. And there's where she mentions, in case this was like your introduction to this world, this is the part that really lets you know that you don't get to live to be 250th birthday without learning a thing or two, Little Miss Clever Boots. So we know she has some kind of mystical powers of some sort, and she's, over 250 years old. They brought her a dove of some sort, which she does some kind of ritual with here. I guess she determines that death is going to be on Earth, and she wants to have a conference with her. Cut to what I'm assuming is New York. I don't think they really say, if I recall. And we meet a young man who's kind of doing a online, well, not online, but just a computer journal entry. 1993, that's pretty early for something like this. But so he's doing a journal entry. His name is Sexton Furnival. He kind of explains how, he's more or less writing a suicide note here. Explaining how he doesn't have anyone to love, he doesn't have anyone to hate, he doesn't understand the meaning of life. His dad was some kind of lawyer, thought he was going to be a hippie lawyer, but turned out to be some kind of Hollywood bigwig lawyer, left the family. The mom is still kind of a hippie, and he calls the mom by her name when he starts addressing her. Sylvia always tells me that she put him through law school. He was going to be a hippie lawyer. I suppose I should give thanks for small miracles. Interesting use of panel flow here, zooming into the city, into the window sill, and there's the flower. Weird black bar, and then kind of flip over, and there's still the flower. Now we're on the inside of the room. Scanning around, it's really kind of setting the stage. And as it comes back out, we see the flower getting watered by the boy, Sexton. So here's his interaction with his mom, and she's fine. She's really nice to him. This isn't some kind of like teen angst. I come from some super abused home. The mom is probably a little overbearing in her being nice. They're talking about how she keeps buying plants and she can't keep them alive, so she would just go buy new ones over and over again. He says he's going to go out for a little while. Presumably, he's going to enact his plan that he was writing there. Down the hall, there's a neighbor he's disabled, and he's very nice and kind to him as well as he's walking through. So he goes out to this garbage landfill area, and it's not really clear what he's doing. He doesn't have a gun. He doesn't have a knife. So he's probably just sitting here thinking. He's standing on top of this, and it falls, and he goes crashing down into the trash. This is a nice 2-page spread. This page confused me, though, because it looks like it's going to read like this, but it doesn't. It actually reads like this. So now he's trapped under this refrigerator and calling for help. So here's a kid that at the beginning when we first meet him, he's writing a suicide note, but now he's actually, I guess, chickened out. He's, wanting help, getting out. And death appears. Now, if you were familiar with the Sandman series, you would say, well, he's dead, and that's why she appears. So she shows up, and they have some banter about, like, wow, that was a dumb thing you did, getting stuck under a refrigerator. He's like, who asked your opinion? She's like, oh, okay, well, I guess I'll go. And he's like, no, please come back. Hello? And she's like, oh, there you are. Well, I'll give you some help. So she is able to throw the refrigerator off of him, which he doesn't really question. I love this 2-page spread, except for what I just mentioned about how it doesn't read correct, because it reads this way, and you would think it goes that way. But otherwise, I like this up angle of death, looking at, like, from underneath her chin, and then she leans forward to speak, and even her hair looks like it's kind of falling forward on him. And there's our first real shot of her, full figure for the book. This is pretty strong, Chris Baccello. I like he draws these like skinny legs. So anyway, she invites him back to her place because he's got a cut and his pants are torn, which he accepts to go with her, which is kind of odd because, like I said, at this point, if you're familiar with Sandman, you're already thinking, well, he's dead. What does she mean go to her place? And she really means there's some sort of an apartment. And as she goes through, it's like she knows the lady working the little corner fruit stand, and she goes by Dee Dee. And the boy asks, like, how long have you known her? And she says, like, her whole family was just killed in a terrible car accident. I've known her for 17 years, implying that she's like 17 years old, and that a social worker is coming to talk to her. But then as they get up there in the room, and pretty good panel flow going on here, like the rubber close-up of the rubber duck. Good camera angles. He doctors up his own leg while she sews up some of the holes he got in his pants. These facial expressions are great, especially of death. She's appearing in pictures and speaking about, the family as if she did have this family that she grew up with and they were killed and everything. But then she starts to kind of go off like, oh, well, they didn't exist really. And he is like, are you just trying to be weird, basically? She's like, neither. I mean, they never existed. Oh, well, if they never existed, who were the people in the photographs? That's just the universe's way of making me feel more comfortable. Technically, right now, I'm about 3 hours old. Again, you lean back on your familiarity with the character from the main Sandman series, and you're like, what is going on here? What does she mean? She's 3 years old. She's living in an apartment. She's in pictures with families. That was nothing that had been established before in any way. So he just kind of decides like, okay, thank you for doing everything, but you're a little bit kooky, and I'm out of here. Slam. And again, we have like just great facial expressions. There's like deadpan, like, yeah, I'm death. And that's when he's like, there's some anger. And then they're like, what are you going to do? So he obviously didn't die from the the refrigerator falling on him. At least we don't think so far. And then he starts to leave. Pretty cool little segue of going downstairs here too. I like this panel motion. Her coming up the stairs. That's pretty neat. Divided by these gutters right here to kind of help. I feel like this is Mark Buckingham. Mark Buckingham, as the inker, when he does Fables later on, he was always doing stuff on the borders like this. And I feel like that's probably a trait that maybe he contributed. Nice page here. This is the money shot, I guess, for the book for the artist to sell. Pretty much he's just kind of going through his thoughts about death right here. Trying to get a handle on what she was saying and if she was crazy or whatever. And as he leaves, there's Mad Hetty. Back to her. And she threatens him with the bottle. Well, he trips and falls. I think she makes him do it somehow. She did something to make him trip and fall so that he's kind of vulnerable. And as he falls, she smashes the bottle so she can kind of get the upper hand on him. And he's like, I don't really know her. I just met her today. I don't have anything to do with her. And she's like, well, you're going back upstairs with me because I can smell her on you. So as they go up, and they come in, she's like, and Death immediately recognizes her. She's like, what do you want, Hetty? And so Hetty basically is saying, I want you to help me do something. And I think there's a part where she says, let's see. What is it, Mad Hetty? What do you want? 100 years ago, I missed you, but I've had plenty of time to think since then, and I haven't missed you this time, or missed this little laddie. Get in there, Bonnie. Leave him out of this, Mad Hetty. What do you want with me? I'm not leaving him out of this. He's my bargaining thing, isn't he? She's like, what do you want? I hid something a long time ago, and I want you to find it for me. Today, Mad Hetty, I'm nobody special today. That is a cue that apparently she is taking the day off. Which makes me wonder, like, does nobody die that day? Like, how does that work? So she's saying, I'm nobody special today. She's like, you're special enough for me. She's like, okay, what do you want? And she said she wants to find her heart. She's been looking for it and cannot find it. And she needs her help to do it. And if I say no, then I start the Bonnie Boy's nose off. Or then I cut the Bonnie Boy's nose off just for starters. And I will. And then that's our cliffhanger. That's our cliffhanger for the issue. And she's not a hero. She is Death. So why should she care about this boy? But again, if you've read The Sandman, you'll know it's like, even though she's Death, she seems to have like compassion to some degree. But anyway, that's what I got for the number 251st top seller of 1993. First book with the Vertigo imprint. This book is pretty heavily in print because it's, you know, like I said, it was the 251st book. I actually just picked this up, the whole set of 1 through 3 for like $11. Should be pretty easy to find. I missed out on getting a set of them signed, a whole set signed by Chris Bachalo for like $17. And I missed that. And then I just went ahead and got this because I wanted it for this little series of videos. So it's an easy find. Of course, it's reproduced in trade paperbacks. There was a second Death series, and I think the two of them together are combined into an Absolute edition. And that's kind of what I was holding out for a long time because I have the Absolutes of Sandman. And I've just not picked it up. So that's all I got for today. Until next time, read your comics.
Making me shake. I knew you were down here.
Try not to get your shirt dirty, please.
Zen.